Good afternoon, everyone out there in YouTube land. My name is Jared. This is my channel, Mazda B3K. This is going to be the companion episode to the last one I worked on, which was working on the rear tank fueling system in my 1989 Ford F-350 named Bertha. And this one's going to be about the aft tank, or the, not aft, but like the mid tank or the front tank, whatever you want to call it. In any case, I know the cinder's busted on it. I don't know the condition of the tank. I don't know the condition of the rollover valve, any of that. We're going to dig into that. We're going to get it figured out. We're going to get it working. We're going to try to test it. Without further ado, let's get started. So here is our tank in question. You can see this is the front tank, and then behind the differential, hard to see from here, but behind the differential is the rear tank. You'll also notice I have the drive shaft out. I'm doing repairs on it, but it also makes our lives a lot easier working on this tank, because normally it would be running right up through here. And since it's not there, it's going to make our access to these tank strap bolts a whole lot easier. So let's get started on this guy. So the first thing we're going to do to make it easier to get this filler neck out of here is we're going to detach it right up at the back of where you actually mount the metal collar that goes into the bed. So we're going to take care of that. And then you'll notice, definitely need to get in here because, number one, this abrasion shield is not in the right place. It should be sitting where this goes over the frame rail. And then number two, it almost looks like the slope on this is wrong. It really should be sitting higher. So you've got gravity feed down. But we'll work on that. And then if you come over here, there's our rollover valve slash sort of vent. There's a, what does Ford call it? I can't remember if it's not TBS, but there's a technical TSB, technical service bulletin, about how these tanks sometimes don't vent right because the vent design's dumb, and you convert this rollover valve into a vent, which we may or may not do. That depends on how I feel. And some other stuff. This tank is a lot more accessible than the rear, so we can do stuff even though the bed is on. So we're going to do stuff. You may notice over here that we're pointing the wrong direction to get to that worm clamp. We're going to have to move the little mud guard thing out of the way if we want to have a shot of getting to that. Okay, so I was able to pull this flap back. As you can see, I got the clamp nice and loose. Then we can hopefully twist this off. I'm going to need both hands to do it, so I can kind of get some pull on this. We're going to do that. Do make sure your tank's not over full, or maybe just make sure you don't have diesel in this line. You're going to pee it everywhere. It's how this works is you've got this outer rubber hose, and then there's an inner flexi hose that should be. Actually, you know what? That's a really good point. Well, where does that clamp? Yeah, there's going to be an inner flexi hose that we're going to have to deal with. So actually, I do need to take it off up there. But having that loose is also handy, because when you go to put this back on, it makes it easier to get the orientation correct so that you don't kink the inner line that's inside of this. So let's go knock that out too, so that way we can drop the tank without issue. All right, so you've got 1, 2, 3. These are going to be 9/32 screws, bolts. Need to get those out, and then that will allow the filler neck to actually be pulled out of this housing. See if I can get these out. Probably not. Oh. Okay, that one's coming out by hand. Not really. We need to do this. There we go. So anyway, rinse and repeat for your other two. Try not to lose these. I have already discovered from experience you can run a self-tapper through it to take care of it, but you know, keeping things looking pretty and all that. Okay, so this bolt may vary for you if somebody's done work on the tank, but the main theme here is you're gonna have a strap, two of them, they run over here, they hook into inserts that are in the frame rail. So when you go to drop this, you know, you just kind of have to bend these out of the way normally once you get the bolt out. And also be aware how much fuel you may or may not have. Oh, this tank is metal. It's supposed to be plastic. Somebody replaced this. Interesting. Okay, so from the sound of it, this tank is empty, which lines up with the fact that I was running on the front tank and then it stranded me because I ran out of diesel. So try to get this as empty as you can when you go to bring it down. It'll make your life so much better when you drop the tank. Because remember, when you're doing this, you're also going to have to fight with the stuff on top of the tank. You're going to have connections for the cinder. You're going to have fuel line, return line, electrical, and the vent valve, and all of that you got to handle. So once you drop one, maybe you loosen the other one a little bit, but not all the way, to give you the room you need to get up top and do what you got to do before you fully drop the tank. Alright, so following my own advice, you can see front one's off, rear one has been loosened a bit. Now I have visibility on our cinder and our electrical and the whole 9 yards, actually. So what we need to do at this point, and I know I'm really close on stuff, so it's kind of hard to see, but we need to remove these quick disconnects, and you can kind of tear them out of there if you have spares. But what you can do is get like a trim tool, I can't even tell if you guys, hang on, there, that's better. Get a trim tool, get under this, and you can play with the legs, and you can also kind of play of where the connector is, and generally you can pop these out without destroying them. If you do destroy them, you should be able to pick up replacements at your local parts store, but they are going to cost you about $1 a clip. So keep that in mind. You've got 2 of them. They are color coded for different sizes, but you get these off. You get this electrical off here, which isn't that hard. You just pull this tab and it'll come off once you wiggle it loose. And then the only thing left is the vent, which I can't see it from, oh, there it is. It's right there. You want to wiggle that guy off. And then what you're left with is just the filler neck, which, since we loosened it at the other side, it shouldn't stop us from bringing this further down. And then we can undo the filler neck and we can inspect it for damage being key. Okay, so as you can see, got that stuff off. And I wound up having to pull the vent line off at the other end, but it's out of the way. And the only thing I got left is the filler neck, which I'm probably going to detach over here. And yes, there is a gas tank on top of me. There's almost no diesel in it, so not a big deal. Again, don't do this when the tank's full. Because I don't think I'm going to get enough pre-play over here to finish pulling this all the way back. That's going to be like a 9, not a 9/32, but something a little bigger to loosen that up. It's the equivalent of an 8mm. I just don't remember what it is. But anyway, that's what we have going on here. This tank's actually really easy to drop compared to the rear tank. So, okay, so remember how I said there's an inner and an outer tube? Check that out. There's your inner tube. And then we just lost our clamp. That's okay. Right there. And somewhere down there is my quick disconnect clamp retainer things. So anyway, we're gonna slide this fella out so we can service him, take a look, see what's going on. But that is how you drop your front tank, and it's easier to drop because I believe it was understood that this may be located under the cab to where you can't lift the bed to work it, so they made it easier. But man, that rear tank where they expect you to raise the bed, not fun at all if you don't take the bed out. But let's slide this out, see what we got to do. I think we got a couple of maintenance items we're going to have to take care of. Alrighty, we are on the tailgate. And we can get a better look at things. So first thing I notice, metal tank. Second thing I notice is it's not really that bad in the back, but up in the front, where that front strap was, has some rust going on, some moisture, something got caught in there. So we got dirt in the channel, and there's this nose cone type thing that was sitting on the front that slid off. And that's probably why we had rust, is that moisture and things were getting caught in there. But we're going to clean that off. I will probably scrape all the loose rust off of this and paint it with some rust locking paint to slow this down so that I can preserve this tank a little longer. And another thing I notice is our locking ring is the usual slide type, so that's good. We're going to need to chip it out and clean it out, probably with some air, before we try to remove this cinder so we don't have a bunch of dirt fall in the tank. Probably going to redo this line because it's in really sorry shape. The rollover valve I'm not going to take out and test. I mean, I don't want to fry this gasket because this whole assembly, gasket and rollover valve, you can't find anywhere. You have to order it in. And I would like to make this a one-day maintenance item. Looking at the tank itself, I don't have a ton of light in there yet. There's definitely diesel in there, a couple of gallons worth. And the cinder was saying it was beyond full, so the cinder's probably smoked. And I also suspect that the pickup cone, pickup sock, strainer, whatever you want to call it, is probably fallen off or missing. So we're going to open this up. We're going to take a look. All right, we're just going to take a little brush. We're going to get in this channel. We're going to get it cleaned up. And then I'll come in with some air and blow all this out. So we do not get garbage in the tank. And I will inspect the tank. I'll inspect the tank, and if things look okay, I won't worry about draining the diesel out, since diesel doesn't really go bad. It can get contaminated, but it doesn't go bad like gasoline does. So just take care of that. Bring you guys back when we can actually look in the tank. Alright, so after some decrustifying, this is what we have, and you'll notice this is a locking ring setup. So you have this inside ring, it slides into tabs on this outside ring, and it slides, to unlock it we need to turn it counterclockwise, like so. So, common way to do that, just get a screwdriver, line up against your tab, get a hammer. And eventually, you'll knock it far enough that the ring will pop out. See, this tab runs through here, and once we get it free, then it'll pop loose, and then you can pull the cinder out. Now, I've knocked some more dirt loose by doing this, so I'm going to spray, keep doing that and keep it as clean as I can until I can pull the cinder out, and then we'll take a look, see what that looks like. Okay, at this point, locking ring's off. So let's get this guy out of here. Oh my. Ho 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 ho. Yeah. Oh man. What is that? Is that the remains of the pickup cone? Yeah, she's been in there a while. Now I know that diesel does varnishy things too. Wow. Okay, one thing to note is when you go to pull this out, make a mark of what your orientation was when you pulled it out. So, in our case, the connector, electrical connector, was at 12 o'clock. So we know that this actually goes in, goes in like this, right? So we can get this to see it in there. Yeah. Now, normally, there will be some sort of a tabbing system, a key of some kind, which is going to restrict how you put this in. So there's only one way you can put it in. And also, just the shape of your cinder is going to prevent you from installing at certain angles. But assuming that the last guy did actually want to get an accurate read on their diesel gauge, we're going to assume, which is dangerous, but we're going to assume that this is the correct orientation. Alright, now we'll look in the tank. See if I can get you a view here. So, I don't know how well this is picking up on camera. We've got some rust debris on the bottom of the tank. It's not terrible. We can definitely run this. I'm not seeing, oh wait, there it is. I just found the remains of the pickup. Yeah, so what happened here is the pickup literally dissolved. And when that happens, it gets it to where the front tank, if it gets below about a quarter tank, or the rear tank too, it can't pull diesel anymore. And then you don't get full use of your tank. But it's, I don't know if you can see it, but it's kind of, if this is a clock, it's kind of off at 10 o'clock. But I see the screen, that's all that's left of it. So that would mean that all this black stuff I see in here, that's the remains of the pickup. And the black stuff that's all over this, that's the remains of the pickup. So I'm going to take a guess and say that this might be the original front tank. The rear tank's been replaced. What I had read is that this tank was supposed to be plastic, the rear tank was supposed to be metal, and the one I have in the rear is plastic, and it matches up with what you can commonly buy online as a replacement. But this fella is metal, but he's still okay. So I'm going to see what I can do to clean this up. I don't know. The strainer should keep most of the garbage out of there, but then again, I don't want to gum up my selector valve. I might be trying to drain this, what's left in here, out so that I can try to spray air or something. We'll see. But I do need to definitely get that strainer out. Okay, that's pretty cool. Okay, there it is. That's what's left. That's the screen, everything else dissolved. So you may be wondering what I'm talking about. It's this guy right here. Don't mind those two filters. That's required on the Power Strokes, not required on the IDIs, but the actual pickup is the same. So as you can see, it's this cone. It's got a strainer at the bottom. It is sometimes called the cone of shame because they have a habit of falling off once the plastic starts to weaken. And then you can't pick up all your fuel. So that would normally slide on right here, and the whole assembly would look like that. So I have a new cone, as you can see, and I have a new cinder assembly. So we're gonna stare and compare this to that, make sure they line up. And then I'll go ahead and slide this on. I'm not going to put a clamp on it because I think by the time it's ready to fall off, it's probably time to replace it anyway. So not necessarily a bad thing versus keeping it clamped on and it fall to pieces anyway. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to go ahead and I'm going to walk you through reinstalling this. And then I'll probably go ahead and just put the tank back in and make sure that we can fill it okay. First things first, you need to get an O-ring in, but before you do that, make sure that your sealing surface is relatively clean. The whole point of this O-ring is more, it's not even for emissions because this truck doesn't have emissions controls, but it's to make sure that you vent okay and so that you don't leak gas out of from the cinder. So don't have to be perfect, but you know, don't put it in there with a bunch of nasty chunks in it and everything. So with that said, kit comes with a new O-ring. The new cinder comes with a new O-ring, like so. Don't think you need to really grease it with anything. Just drop it right in, like so. Make sure it sits in the channel, you know, right size and all that jazz. There we go. Actually, this one's trying to hop out, so I may try to stretch it gently, because some O-rings you can stretch a little bit and some will just pop. You don't want to pop it. So, stretch this up a little bit. See if that'll fit in a little better. There we go, that's better. It's still trying to be mean to me. Alright, that's good enough. So then we're going to go ahead and install the new cinder. Our reference point is knowing that we need to have our electrical connector at 12 o'clock. Oh wait, almost forgot. Almost did myself dumb here. You do need to, if it's not already included in your replacement, go ahead and slide this on. Like so. As you can see, it doesn't really just come off. You got to wiggle it off. So that'll do her. Now that the foot's on, strainer, sock, whatever you want to call it. So we'll sneak in our float first, get that foot in, bring it on over, bring it on down. Then we're going to have to fight with it. Okay, there we go, starting to get in there. Come on. Interesting. I say interesting because with the foot on there, it's fighting me quite a bit to try to, or it could be the O-ring because this one's fresh. Could be my problem, but I'm guessing it's more the foot. It's trying to fight me a bit. Doesn't want to quite go into 12 o'clock. Yeah, and that's off center. So I'm going to work with this because the foot's on there. It's fighting me. And I'll see if I can't get it in position before I install our new locking ring. Okay, figured a few things out. Remember I mentioned that there's normally a keyway? There's our keyway right there. there's a tab here on the bottom of the cinder that lines up with that. And what I also figured out is when you go to put this in, you want to raise up the float and put the sock in first, the cone, and then kind of let the float come in last. And it's still going to fight you a little bit, but if you drop it in that keyway and then kind of put some pressure on it, everything will sit nicely and you'll be fine. It's definitely the foot it's trying to fight you, but it definitely needs to be there if you want to get full usage of the tank. So when we go to put this in, you're going to feel stuff bumping against stuff. But if we can get our keyway lined up, we can kind of get the rest of this to drop in. But you got to get that keyway to line up, and then the O-ring is going to kind of fight you too. You need both hands to do this. But then everything will drop flat. And you should wind up with this a little bit, almost kind of between 12 and 1 o'clock is really where this winds up. And then you put your locking ring in, you should be good to go. So what I found I had to do to help is I stretched the O-ring out a bit so it'd sit properly, and then when I dropped my locking ring in, I got it positioned ready, so positioned appropriately so that it was prepared to go under each of these little locking tabs. And then I pushed down with one hand, and I took a hammer, regular old carpenter's hammer, claw hammer, framing hammer, and started tapping the ring clockwise. And those tippy taps were enough to get all the tabs started, and then I was able to spin them until the locking ring starts raising up, and that's where you get your friction to hold everything tight. So hopefully I got it. Hopefully the foot has the ability to still suck up gas, because another known issue is they slide down a little bit and then they affix themselves to the bottom of the tank and create suction, and then you get air in the line, and then, for a diesel, that's no bueno. And then, the truck doesn't run. But I hope that's what we need. So next step, for me anyway, is I'm going to get this line off, make sure there's no obstructions in it. And again, I'm kind of just hoping that the rollover valve is okay, because I don't want to thrash this gasket. My OCD might get the better of me, and I might still try to get this out, but it's kind of a pain to get in and out. You have to bring out the rollover valve and the gasket at the same time. It's actually more like a grommet, but you got to bring them out at the same time. Otherwise, it just doesn't work real well. So the next task for me is going to be hitting all this rusty area with rust locking paint. I'm not going to get it perfect, but the way this paint works is you hit it and you scrape the best you can any of the loose rust off, and then you put on a few coats of your paint, and then you move on with your life. I'm not going to hit the whole tank, only this nose area in the front that it's kind of nasty. I've already scraped off the toadstool, not toadstool, but like toadstone, I think was the word I was looking for. Kind of things with a screwdriver, like stuff like what was over here. We see those divots. I just popped that out with the screwdriver. And more general rust, once again, I used a little wire bristle scrubby. And I've got it in a pretty good spot, so I'm going to hit it with the paint. And then go ahead and work on reinstallation. Okay, so here's the filler neck, so we can investigate. So how this works is you got a metal piece that runs from about here to there, and then there's going to be a flexible inner tube that runs all the way down through here, comes out here. This is what actually goes in the tank. This is what actually delivers gas to the tank. And then you have all this air around, right? So as the tank fills up with diesel, the air can then move between this and this outer rubber piece. It moves back up, and then located inside of here, and you can see, I'm not sure if you can see them, but located at 12 o'clock on that second metal lip on the inside, there's a vent. And that is what allows the air to escape so that diesel can go in and you can fill your tank. If this inner hose gets twisted up for some reason, or if your vents get clogged, or if this outer rubber line doesn't lay out right, you'll have problems filling. And as I mentioned earlier, Ford actually wrote a tech article basically about it, where they took the rollover valve and you extend out the line and you run it up this main rubber line, and then you drill another hole up at the fuel door, and that becomes your vent line. That works fine as long as you have, your actual fuel door in place. Otherwise, moisture and garbage are going to get straight down in your tank, and that's no bueno. Anyway, I'm going to take this off to inspect it. Before I did, I made the assumption, which is dangerous, but I made the assumption this is laid out right, and I made a paint mark to line up the metal collar with the outer tube. That way, I can put it back the way I found it and slide it back in after I inspect everything. So this is what it looks like at the collar. I wanted to inspect this to make sure the clamp was okay and I didn't see any weirdness going on here, and I don't. The only thing I really saw that was out of order is that this abrasion shield was in completely the wrong spot. It's supposed to be over the frame rail, and it was not there, so I'll have to move it. It can be a pain to thread this back out all the way, and I don't think I need to, because I remember when I was investigating things earlier, I actually ran my bore scope all the way down that inner tube into the tank, so that means it probably is not twisted up or obstructed. So I'm just going to shove this back on. I'll leave that clamp loose to help with trying to get everything lined back up, but I think this one's okay. Alright, it's been hour and a half since we last spoke. Paint has gotten as dry as I need it to get. It doesn't hide the rust, the pitting, but what it does is it seals it off so it will not continue to rust. Went ahead and I did a little work down here too. There's some stuff I didn't get done, but this is not bad, and that's not bad. What I was working on was getting the really bad stuff, so that is all done. I checked the filler neck, looks good. So we're going to go ahead and start putting this all back together. I checked this breather line, it is good, but I don't have anything immediately available to replace it with, so since it's only a breather, I'm going to put it back on. I also have access to that without dropping the tank, so if I want to replace it with some better line down the road, which I do, then it's not that hard to access. So, I'm going to put this in. I'm probably going to go butt first, kind of the reverse of the way I took it out, and we'll just get it knocked out before I run out of daylight here. Okay, updates. So I almost forgot my clamp for that, so I got to take care of that. Put it over here, got my lines back in, put my retainers back in, that's back on. A little tricky to see, but I went ahead and I reattached the breather. And then I've got the nose cone back on here, and you're supposed to get it behind the tank strap, so make sure you do that. And this is pretty much ready to go. The only thing I need to do is get my clamp back on and then secure the filler neck. And once we have that, I can go ahead and get this nut started. And at that point, we're just tightening things back up. But it's important that since the tank is mostly back in position at this point, that we get the filler neck more or less how it needs to be. So it'll just kind of rise up to where it needs to screw in with those 3 screws in the filler door. So we got to do that and then tighten that clamp. Because alternatively, you're going to have to leave the clamp loose, fiddle things around until you get what you need, and then tighten it up. And that's a lot trickier to do. So one thing that we get to check now, since the tank is levelish and we have a new cinder in there, is we get to see if our front cinder is working appropriately. So right now we're on the rear tank, and you see it shows a little more than a quarter tank, right? Let's see what the front does. Would you look at that? Before, it would just shoot to the moon and make you think we have infinite fuel, but what it shows is we're at what, 3/8 of a tank, more or less. And I can hear the selector doing its little zip noise, so we are moving between the front and the rear tanks, even though that difference is very tiny, because both tanks have roughly the same amount of fuel in them. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So cinder appears to be working. That's nice. I went ahead and I checked the alignment for the, turn this back off. Check the alignment on the fuel filler neck, and it looks like that's going to work out pretty nicely. If we get under here, take a look. As you can see, you can even see daylight through the hole, so it's lined up with the hole. So we're looking really good there. I went ahead and tightened down at the tank side. This is still loose, but I can tighten that up. That's not a big deal. And like I said, I got the nose cone in. I've got the tank sitting loosely right now. The nuts are on, but they're not tight. So we want to make sure our straps look good, which they do. That one wound up getting bent a little bit, but it should pull itself out when I tighten it up. And I think we're ready to go ahead and put it back on. Well, we hit a snag. We have a leak. What I think happened is most likely there was a little rust nodule that I popped out when I painted, and that opened up a hole. I think this tank as a whole is okay, but now I got to figure out what can I use to patch that up, because like I said, overall this tank is fine, I'm pretty sure, but that little rust nodule was enough, and that's why I put paint on everything. But anyway, I'm going to figure that out. This is kind of annoying because we know that this tank is, you know, like 3/8 full, so that's, I don't know, 5 gallons of gas or diesel, 6 gallons. This is a 5-gallon catch that I have under it, so I guess we're going to find out, because I'm not going to be able to do anything until this stops dripping. And so I'm going to look into whether or not it would be worth my while to drill a little hole right there so it would drain faster. Because I know diesel, you know, it doesn't burn near as readily as gasoline does, so you could get away with that and not, you know, explode yourself. All right, let me go do some research. I shall return. Good morning, everyone. Today is a new day. As you can see, I had to do some work here. So I put everything back together and I noticed a leak. And that turned out to be here. And I tried to do a quick repair. That did not work. That's the reason why I put a self-tapper in there basically. You can take a self-tapper and some sort of a seal, like a washer, and you can plug stuff off real quick. But I decided just to go ahead and drain all the diesel out of it, which I did. And that was last night. And now this morning I've come back and I took a wire wheel and I wire wheeled all the dents and dings and divots where I plucked all those heavy rust nodules out of, and sure enough, some of those opened up into holes. We've got those two already drilled out, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 or 6 little pinholes opened up. And what that's from is that nose cone, which I think the reason why that nose cone is there is the idea that if you get a piece of debris kicked up by a tire, it's supposed to hit that nose cone and the tank not get punctured, I think is the idea. But what that winds up doing is trapping dirt and moisture. And so over the years, if you don't get down here and clean that out, you get this rust, and then, you know, it weakens the tank. But what I'm going to do is I've got some JB Weld steel stick, which is the putty. And I thought this was done draining, but we're going to get this done draining. I'm going to dry everything again. And then we're just going to plug all these holes. I'll give it the day to cure, and then we'll paint it, and then we'll fill her back up with diesel and see what we get. And there we are. So I'm gonna let this, it's supposed to be a 1 hour cure. I'm gonna give it a whole day. We're right inside the optimal curing temperature. That's between 50 Fahrenheit to 80 Fahrenheit. And just gonna let this cure up. And then I'll do a diesel test and see if it's going to hold diesel, and see where we go. Because you'll notice I patched the holes, and then I patched divots that were not holes yet, but the metal was thinner there. Wanted to put some support on it. And you'll also notice that none of this is inside the strap channel. Strap channel's back here. So shouldn't have to worry about that. This was all 100% caused by that nose cone. So works to protect you from rocks, but after, 30 years, makes your tank leak. Good morning, everyone. Today is a new day. So as you can see, I did my patches yesterday. I intended to do a leak test today and all that jazz, and I still do, but I'm a little bit behind schedule. I think this is going to hold pretty well. I may have a seep that I missed. I'm not sure yet. I need to put some diesel in and check. As you can see, I've got the tank mounted back up. I got everything reconnected. The cinder wouldn't go below 1/4. And what I found out is the cinder rod on this, the float on this cinder, it's designed to pop off. And that had happened when I was installing it, and I put it in 180 degrees off. So I flipped it around, and then everything sat down much better, and now it correctly reads as empty because this tank is empty. So I'm gonna go ahead, put some diesel in there, make sure that all of this is, none of it's leaking. If I have any kind of seeps or anything, I'll deal with that. And then I'll finish reinstalling the front tank, and should be good to go for a while. I took a closer look in this tank, and there is some nastiness up in the front baffle and then down in the back on the inside that I can't reach. It's not horrible, but it's not great. So this tank will be getting replaced in a couple of years, but for the here and the now, I'm going to get some money out of it, and then it'll be replaced with a plastic tank. Let's put some diesel in. Let's make sure our filler neck is glug-glugging like it should, and that I have indeed actually patched all the holes up here. All right, if you notice the red tint to the diesel, somebody had put some off-road in here. Technically that's a no-no, but yeah. Appears to be glug-glugging okay. Looks like I need to tighten up that nozzle a little bit. Let's see. Yep, so we're glug-glugging okay. Tighten that nozzle. I mean, though I'd have to fill the whole tank to make sure that it's displacing like it ought for the whole tank, because the rear tank up to 5 gallons appeared to be fine, and then it wasn't. And I had to go through this whole process yesterday of essentially rotating the filler hose 90 degrees at the tank end. Was entirely not fun. But in doing so, I was able to get it to where you can fill it full and there's not a problem. That should be enough diesel to let us know if we're going to have a leak or not. That should have filled the bottom of the tank. So now we wait, see if we get any kind of a seep where we were doing all of our patching, and if everything looks okay, I'll clean it all up and then I'll paint it again. And then I'll finish tightening up the tank straps, because that's basically the last thing left to do. I took care of everything else. All right, let's see if our cinder is behaving. All right, this is the fact that we're not shooting for F tells me this is the front tank, because the rear tank is full. I just put 5 gallons in it. It had maybe a gallon or two before. So yeah, that's looking pretty good. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is a new day. So it took some more trials and tribulations, but I finally got this tank patched. If you're working with JB Weld steel sticks, something that I learned a little bit late in the process is when you go to put your patch on, it's going to try to stick to your fingers. Use your other hand, get it started to where it's going to stick, and then take a shop towel, you know, one of these guys, and you can press as hard as you want into the steel stick and it will not stick to your shop towel. And what that let me do is squeeze all the air voids out of it, because that was the problem I had. Was I had a tiny drip out of here once I got it up to about half a tank, and that was because the initial patch, there was an air void right there and it was allowing it to leak. So I stripped all that off with a wire wheel again, found the leak, repatched it, squished it flat with it actively leaking with paper towel, and the plug held. That's the other thing. If it's seeping or even a slow drip and you throw some steel stick on it, it will hold. The diesel will not knock it off. It'll hold, it'll harden, and life will be grand. So as you can see, the paint's wet. I had to put a few coats of paint back on it. And once this, I'll give it, 15-30 minutes to dry. I'm gonna put the nose cone back on, and then I'll get this buttoned up. And not related to this video, but I got my drive shaft back, so I'll put that back in. This thing can finally move around. So in any case, I'm going to wrap up the video here, because we've got a successful repair. The tank is working, the cinder is fixed, and it's holding fuel like it's supposed to. And we're all good. Definitely was a bit of a journey to get here, but we got it figured out. So if this video helped you out, like, share, subscribe. Tell your buddies, tell your friends, get more folks working on their own stuff. I'll see you next time.